Welcome to AK Podcast, where we explore science and nutrition behind livestock care and management with the best and the brightest in the business. I'm your host, Chris Radke, part of the sales department here at Agri-King. And with me today, and I think he's in his normal location, is a director of field services and a member of the sales management team, Mr. Mike Donaldson. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, really well, Chris. Not only am I back home, I'm in my home studio, but we have an official mascot now.
I noticed that.
Someone sent me a cow.
Oh, I love that.
Nice. Maybe we'll take suggestions on her name or something. But right now, I just thought it was kind of funny to have there in the background. So
Yeah,
nope,
I
all
love
good.
that. Cool. Hey, Mike, what are we talking about today, and who's with us?
Well, Chris, today we're going to do an episode, and we're going to talk about start talking about the different approaches dairies can take to their nutrition program, depending on where they're located and how they want to farm their land. Essentially, what we want to talk about today, we're joined by Agri-King nutrition consultant Fredy Urquia, and we're going to talk about corn silage and predominantly alfalfa, or at least a perennial approach to the hay crop. Fredy, thank you so much for being here. Could you give us some of your background and a little bit of information about you?
Thanks, Mike. Yes, I'm happy to be here. So since you're talking about your background there and you show your cow, I want to show this picture here. This was painted by my wife, so that's really nice. So
That's a good
I'm
one.
to be here. I hope I can bring some valuable information. And let's talk about a little bit where I come from. So I've been in the industry for 28 years. I started in Mexico, on the central north region of Mexico, which is very similar to what you will find in the panhandle of Texas or New Mexico. Not quite Arizona, not arid as Arizona, but kind of the same desert where cows are established in Mexico. The name of the city is Torreon. I was there for 15 years. I also, on that time, I was traveling to Saudi Arabia, working for Almorai. That's Phoenix, just like Phoenix. So my experience is more like in the desert conditions, right? In 2012, I moved to the U.S. I was based on Amarillo, Texas, but I covered all the Panhandle territory. We went all the way to Las Cruces, New Mexico, and serviced dairies all around those areas. And in 2018, I was moved here to Idaho, where I live now in the Treasure Valley, Boise, and working with dairies around here on the other valley, and starting in California on the organic dairies. So that's in a nutshell what I've been doing all these years.
That's great, and I really appreciate the different perspective someone like you can bring in. When we've had trainings at our home office that I'm involved with, and a couple times people from your current part of the world that have been out, and I'll sometimes take them for a ride out into the countryside around Iowa. And several times I've had people so insistent that you cannot be growing this corn without irrigation. I just can't see it. And I've actually stopped and had them walk out through the field and prove to them that water just comes from the sky. We're not having to pump it. So, there's a lot of different ways people dairy, and it can be all of it can be very successful. So the thing I mentioned before, I want to talk a little bit, starting out, depending on where you are, corn silage is a constantly growing part of a lot of dairy rations. But especially where you live and a lot of the places you work, Fredy, alfalfa, either in the form of hay or haylage, is a big part of the rest of that diet. Could you talk a little bit about your experiences? I know it's going to be mostly with hay, but maybe mention haylage and some of the things that you'd like to try to do if you have that option to adjust a diet.
Sure. So what I do when I sit down with a dairyman, we first look at okay, how much forage are we planning? What is our objective, right, on forage? So let's say we're gonna feed 55-pound dry matter. How much forage would we feed? The dairyman would like to have as much forage as he can, right? And me too. I would like at least to have 50% forage, and in most of the cases on Mexico or Texas Panhandle, corn silage would be mostly grown on their fields, right? So that's what they have control on, and that's where they can control quality and quantity, well, depending on the elements, obviously, right, on water. But once we have that number, once we have the yield, once we have analysis of what kind of quality we're going to deal with, then we start looking at okay, so we need to complement this with hay. Or alfalfa, sorry, alfalfa, either hay or haylage. Mostly hay in my experience, because hay, if you can control, how haylage is harvested and put it into your own, if it's not your own field,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't control moisture, if you don't control packing, if you don't control inoculation of it, so haylage can turn out to be a forage that you won't be able to use, because
Sure.
it really when it's good is fantastic, but when it's bad is just it goes to you can feed it. It would not. You lose two times, right? You lose with the forage and you lose with the cows, right? So, but when you have good haylage, cows really enjoy it. Like you get. I believe with haylage you get most of the real nutrients, like sugar and really palatability. Like haylage is fantastic when it's good. And hay, you have a window, right? Like you have the like. You here in Idaho, you have first, second, and fourth cut, and you need to buy on the best time of the year, right? And so it depends on how much you were able to buy and store to you complement with corn silage. So what we do is we know how much corn we're going to have. We know how much forage we're going to have to complete that 27 pounds, 27 and a half pounds for that 55 pounds of dry matter that we're going to feed. And then the complementary things like cottonseed, beet pulp, or, whatever is missing, with the other commodities like soy best, soy plus, or um, um, uh, bypass fats, and corn. So that's the way I work with clients in the past and right now.
So, and maybe for simplicity, and let's talk about your Idaho world, because there are going to be some differences with some of the other places you go. And although Agri-King is not currently sending Freddie to Saudi Arabia, we're certainly open to that someday. But I'm sure that's a whole nother variation. But in Idaho, you mentioned that most of your people grow their corn for silage. Do they usually have if I'm a dairyman in your part of Idaho, do I have someone I always buy my hay from, or do I bounce around from different distributors depending on the year and what their quality is?
I would say big dairies have that problem, and when I say big dairies, 10,000 cows, 6,000 cows, they have to go through different providers, right? And then they go to Nevada, they go to Oregon, Washington, so Eastern Idaho, there's good hay over there. So I guess that has two answers. That question, like if you're a small dairy, 1,000 cow, 700 to 1,000 cow dairy, you have that benefit of probably only having one guy delivering your alfalfa, and that makes it easier, right? And then you can have it all sampled, and you have your stacks. But with a big dairy, you don't have that luxury. You have to get you have to fight and get the best, and have enough inventory, because that is a concern, right? Will I have enough for to go around the year, right? So I would say on a big dairy, you have a lot of variation. So that's when the nutritionist and the farm manager needs to have test all these hay qualities, and have them separate and know which time of the year you're going to use which stack. Like during the summer, you want to use the best hay, right? Highly digestible hay, right? And maybe during the spring flush, you can use a little bit less, I don't know, the 150s RFBs combined with another one, and the 200s, use them right now, right? So that's how we manage it.
So that's the kind of thing that I think's interesting. I've been in the Northeastern Midwest my whole career, where an awful lot of what people feed, they grow, and we're used to partnering with our clients, talking with our prospects. Make the best you can. You're the one that decides when we're going to go out and cut. Make the best. Try and get the best. Nothing but the best. And sometimes the weather gives you something else. But literally in your situation, when you sit down with people, you're trying to balance out, I assume, some degree of, okay, that's really great. Hey, but that price isn't so good. When I'm going to get an inventory, I'm going to have different piles. It's not enough to feed my 10,000 cows the absolute best hay every single day, it sounds like.
Exactly. That's exactly how it is. You have to adapt. You have to be creative. You have to use, other byproducts that you can find in the industry. Like here we have beet pulp. We have, other options that could come into place to maybe not use as much hay as we're talking about hay. If you have those 140s, 150s, that they're not gonna be good for intakes, right? And so you have to probably reduce the amount that you will be able to use and compensate with other byproducts or commodities that are around, and that's when you start balancing to get to the sweet spot, right?
Is in your world, is getting that, you've referenced a couple times, you're going to work with a producer. This is the amount of corn silage I want to aim to be able to feed. Can you hit that pretty predictably, that corn silage can be a foundation that doesn't have to move a lot through the year?
No, Mike. There's years that we have, I don't know, 25 tons per acre, and some years that we're close to 40. It all depends on weather.
Okay.
So no, it's not predictable. Um, I guess you have to play it by ear, and then when you have your yield at the end of October, when you have everything placed and you have analysis, and that's when you start planning. Okay, we need to get this hay in the spring, to make this work. It's not. I would say in Texas it was a little more constant.
Okay.
The yields. Um, uh, Most of the corn silage in the panhandle of Texas would be on pivots, so that makes it
Um,
really easier to predict, to treat, and to have the enough water, I would say in Texas, we had a better prediction of how much yield we're going to have and how much uh, corn we were going to be able to get for the season.
okay. So while we're talking about corn silage, and before we started this, you and I were just talking a little bit with Chris, and the topic of BMR came up. And just like all of our podcasts, I'm sure somewhere there's some really good agronomy podcasts, but that's not what we're trying to do here at all. We're talking about once it's once it's being harvested, and certainly once it's coming out of storage, then that's where we're going to talk about these things. But you and I were talking about BMR corn, nothing to do with growing it. Yeah, it's great stuff until you get a windstorm and it's all laying flat.
Yeah, lodging. Yeah.
But what are some of the things that you're dealing with as a nutritionist if someone has BMR corn silage?
Uh, so I would say that that's one of those situations that you need to be careful what you're wishing for, because BMR has a lot of advantages. Like their lignin content has anywhere from 5 to 10% higher NDF digestibility, which makes it a faster digestion rate of passage. It exits the rumen faster. You get higher intakes. You get high yields of milk. For transition cows, it's a perfect forage, because they have all this digestibility. And then you will be able to use less supplement, less energy supplements, right? Less corn, less bypass fat. I don't want to. I don't want to say disadvantages that you have in BMR, but let's say considerations. You'll have less yield per acre. That's something that happens, and since you're gonna have more intake of the corn silage, then you have to have more inventory, right? So it's a good problem that to have. Like cows are eating it, but they're gonna go through it really fast, right? So
Okay.
you have to be careful on that. And more on the nutritional side, to put it on simple words, you have a fragile fiber that goes through the rumen faster, right?
Okay.
Doesn't contribute a lot on the rumen mat, and you have to be careful with that, because then it will, you probably have acidosis or less chewing effect, cut chewing effect. So it is, in Texas, I remember they were aiming for 2 or 4 millimeters on longer fiber length, and if you were formulating for 30 to 28 NDF on the total ration, you had to be careful. You had to go to maybe to 33 to 35% NDF, because you get less physical effective NDF. So sometimes we had to use straw to make
Okay.
to make up that to get to that number, right? So it's a great. Don't get me wrong. It's a great crop, but I don't. I think that if you're gonna just feed BMR, you have to be careful on what you're doing. Have a lot of samples. Take a look at manure and cut chewing, and see your components, where they're going, because you might be lacking of that rumen mat, that fermentation, and it's going to be a high rate of passage what you're going to have on that rumen. So you need to be really, really looking at signs on the cows, right? But it's a great product. In my personal experience, I used it with a conventional one, like maybe 70-30, 60-40, and we ended up having a good result, But honestly, I've never fed it alone. I fed sorghum silage, BMR sorghum silage in Mexico. It was really good, but lodging was a big problem.
Oh.
So you had to harvest it, and it was a place that we had a lot of wind, So you had to harvest it. You had to be really, harvesting when when wind was predicted to come, So sometimes it was not mature enough, So that makes it even worse, right? Less
Well,
fiber.
yeah, I've never. Reason I'm smiling and laughing so much, I'm used to trying to figure out when it's going to rain, when the sun's going to come out. I've never even considered having to harvest based on wind predictions.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is north central. It's right there where El Paso is, So there's a lot of wind there all the time, So
Sure.
this is where these dairies were based. They did this for 3 or 4 years, but the problem was lodging, and
Yeah.
they decided not to continue with it. But it was it fed really great on the cows.
Well, I want to ask another question about the Idaho world, and then I would like to get a little bit of uh, the work you do in Mexico. I find very intriguing, so I want to come back to that in a second. You had mentioned that beet pulp was a good source of fiber in Idaho when you were needing something. Um, I'm once again in the Midwest. It's always soy hulls first, soy hulls second, then cottonseed. You've got to be farming in the right place. The thumb of Michigan, parts of Minnesota, for beet pulp to be really affordable. What are your sources of commodity fibers when you do need to go that direction?
Um, so beet pulp would be number one because we have a lot of plants here. Amalgamated is one of the biggest ones on sugar production, and there's a big fight on contracts with them, to get beet pulp. Everyone's fighting to get some, and they use beet pulp shreds, which are even better,
Yeah.
higher content of sugar and pectins, and so very digestible, very palatable. We also have soybean hulls as well. Sometimes you can get a citrus pulp from California.
Really?
Almond hulls also, it's an option, but really the best, the big fight is about beet pulp. I don't see a lot of almond hulls here in Idaho. I see it
Hmm.
more in Oregon, but those would be the sources. So if you don't get a contract with beets, probably soy hulls would be the next choice. We do feed most of the farms feed cottonseed. We do get
Okay.
cottonseed. We feed I don't know, anywhere from 3 to 5 pounds. And sometimes prices are really ridiculous. But right now it's okay. We can use it. They got good contracts, but those are, if you go to, I don't know, 10 dairies, I would say 6 of them are using cottonseed.
Okay. Okay. So let's go to your experiences in Mexico. That's something I really would like to hear. I'm sure even compared to probably, especially Idaho, but even Texas in some ways, that's got to be a whole nother set of variables that you deal with in Mexico. Tell us about Mexican dairying.
Absolutely. So genetics are the same, Mike. Genetics are universal, right? You can get same genetics anywhere. The expression of those genetics has a different story, right? But uh, I would say a farm that was built 5 years ago in Mexico has the same technology, has the same milking parlor, same softwares. Everything would be really the same. You would be surprised to see how well technified these dairies are. I am talking about the dairies in. There's 3 pockets in Mexico. There are the most important is North Central, where Chihuahua and Coahuila states. And then you go to central Mexico, where Querétaro, it's close to Mexico City, and then you go to Jalisco. Those are the sites that you will find big dairies, and when I say big dairies, are 1,000 cows on. They are really well technified. We have big issues with water in the central part of the country. Drought, every year is a drought, so we have to use aquifers. Then we go way, way deep to get water, 300 meters, 400 meters. It's, you have to go way, way down, and the quality of water is not good at all. So it's tough. It's tough. There's a irrigation district, but like this year, there was no water on the dams, on the reservoirs. So this year
Oh,
they didn't get enough water, so the yields will be terrible. We rely on hay, production of hay. Most of the hay is with wells. It doesn't depend on the irrigation district. Um, Forage is a challenge. So we have another disadvantage. Corn, cottonseed, soybean meal comes from the U.S. So you have to haul it from long distances. Everything is 25% higher in price. Because of that.
Yes.
Minerals also come from here. So if you think of a diet here, a 55-pound diet, that it would be around $12. Over there is going to be $14, $15. Because
Really?
it's high. Yeah, everything is higher. Cottonseed, you name it. So it's a challenge. So anyone that wants to get a cheaper diet needs to grow their own forage, control it, harvest for quality. Not yield, because you're not gonna get the yield. You have to aim for quality. And there's dairies that are trying to expand, and they can't because they don't have enough farm grounds. Because the first thing you need to assure is your forage, right? And there's farms that haul forage, I don't know, 1,000 miles away, which is ridiculous, right? Yeah, you
My
can go from
gosh.
central Mexico all the way to Tijuana to get hay, right? Because there's no hay in Chihuahua this year, so it's tough. It's not easy, It's
Yeah.
really, really tough to be a dairyman over there. But Mexico is not auto-sufficient in milk, So any guy that makes it on the industry will keep growing, because there's a lot of powder being imported to supply the demand of milk in Mexico. So it's a really tough place to be, but that's where I always wanted Agri-King to come in to Mexico, to since we're looking for quality. Our technologies can bring assistance and great products to make those forages, nutrients more available for them. That is my aim. That's why I insist a lot on getting there. It's been tough, but we're gonna get there. But forage quality is and quantity is a big limitant, and over there is the opposite. I would say diets are 60% concentrate and 40% forage, because there's not enough forage. So it's tough, and you don't see the 4% butterfats with those rations. You struggle to get 350, 340.
My. Okay. Well, I know you're working really hard. I don't want to jinx anything, but the most recent updates I've heard is that we're getting very close
Yes,
to
sir.
the approval that it needs to actually go there and help those dairymen as well. We really appreciate your effort on that. Wouldn't be happening without you. So you're going to be our first trial case or victim. I don't know how I want to put that.
Oh boy.
When we have a nutritionist on, I want you to tell me, and I think we'll pin it down a little bit because you work in such a big area. I want to find out, if I was an Idaho dairyman, if I'm one of your clients, and we're sitting down ahead of the coming cropping season, what do you want your dream ration to look like for a milk cow? And you think for a second, do you want BMR and conventional corn, and what split? What do you want as far as hay? I don't want to get all the way into the percent soluble versus bypass. I'm not trying to get that far into the weeds. But if you were to jump on an elevator with me, and between the first and the 8th floor, you were going to tell me what you'd like me to feed, what direction would you send me?
Okay. Yeah. So if I think again on that 55-pound dry matter ration, those 27 pounds of forage, I would like to have a 50-50, 55% forage. I would move between 50 and 55. Okay. On that let's say on that 50% forage, I would really like to be on 60% corn silage. If we can have a combination of BMR and conventional, that'd be great. But on real sense, I think would be conventional here in Idaho. I would like to see a good dry matter on that corn silage. And when I say good, let's put a number to it, between 35 and 38% dry matter. I want to see that. I want to have a 38% starch, on that silage, and I would like to have enough to go year round and not have to make adjustments on like we're in, like right now, we're about to be done, and we need to, it's already almost to harvest, but we need to put the step on the brakes, right? I don't like those changes, so I would really like to feed more corn silage than alfalfa. I think alfalfa, I would like to be able to be picky on the alfalfa, just buy the best of the season, and reject alfalfa that is not, because I have a big inventory of corn silage. Because I'm now in control of most of my forage. I would like to be very picky on the hay that we're going to buy,
Okay.
and that would be my ideal situation. That's what I would really like you to be, or a dairyman to be flexible on. Hey, let's do our best on our corn silage. Let's aim for that dry matter. Let's do the agronomic side to get it. Insect control on that, on all of that, and just harvest when the corn is ready, not when your harvester wants, right? Like, oh no, no, when I want, right? Like when it's ready, when this field is ready, go in, harvest it, have a great dry matter, and then buy the alfalfa. That would be my dream.
That's perfect. Well, Fredy, you have been an absolute delight. I've loved the way this has gone. I always feel a little bit smarter after I do these. I get to talk to really smart people and pick up some of the things I'm curious about. So no, I appreciate you joining us. Chris, what'd you learn today?
My big takeaway is just, I guess Fredy just kind of his little insights into how a dairy farm operates in Mexico. Just the trouble or the hardship of you have to go maybe 1,000 miles to get hay just seems ridiculous when I can go like 20 minutes down the road and get some hay here. So I think that's just, or how hard it is to get water. It's just things that I don't normally think about because we have it, but I think it helps everybody else think about different ways of operating, and it's just opening our eyes for things like that. And I really like that. So thank you, Fredy. If you liked what we talked about, you can find us just about on any socials. So find us there. Please leave us a review. It helps us get more views to our podcast. We can find us on our website at agriking.com. And if you have any questions or follow-ups, you can email us at podcast@agriking.com. And if you'd like to name Mike's cow with the yellow booties, give us some suggestions. And Mike will show it for us. Yeah, look at that thing. Give us some suggestions and we'll see what we can do. All right, Fredy and Mike, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, thank you, guys. Appreciate it, Fredy. Thank you so much.
Anytime.